My name is Selena Matthews, and at 22, I should have been celebrating the proudest moment of my life. 4 years of sleepless nights, 2 jobs, and straight A's led to this moment, graduation day with valedictorian honors. But as I checked my phone one last time before the ceremony, my heart sank. Sorry, honey. We're just too tired to make the drive. We love you, though. Meanwhile, my Instagram feed showed my parents smiling at my sister Natalie's spa day. Before we dive into what happened next, where are you watching from? Drop a like and subscribe if you've ever felt invisible in your own family. Growing up in the Matthews household meant living with unspoken rules. As the firstborn daughter, I quickly learned my role: be responsible, get good grades, and never cause trouble. My parents, Thomas and Karen Matthews, were respected members of our suburban community outside Chicago. Dad worked as a financial advisor, while Mom managed a successful boutique downtown. We lived in a beautiful 2-story colonial house with a perfectly manicured lawn, the picture of upper-middle-class success. Then there was my sister Natalie, 3 years younger, and seemingly born with a spotlight following her everywhere. With her natural beauty, outgoing personality, and infectious laugh, she effortlessly became the center of attention in any room. While I buried myself in books, Natalie collected friends and admirers. While I stressed over maintaining perfect grades, Natalie breezed through social events and became the queen of every dance floor. Selena, help your sister with her homework, became a constant refrain in our house. Selena, be understanding that we need to miss your science fair because Natalie has a dance competition. Selena, we know you got straight A's again, but can we talk about it later? We need to focus on Natalie's struggling grades right now. And I still remember my 10th grade science project winning first place at the state competition. I called home buzzing with excitement only to get my dad's voicemail. When I finally reached them that night, Mom answered distractedly. "That's wonderful, honey. Sorry we couldn't talk earlier. Natalie had a minor fender bender in the parking lot at the mall. Nothing serious, but you know how emotional she gets. We've been dealing with that all afternoon." No congratulations dinner followed, no proud display of my trophy. Just a quick pat on the back the next day and a "we always knew you were smart." Meanwhile, when Natalie placed third in a local singing competition, my parents threw a surprise party and invited the entire extended family. The pattern was subtle but consistent. My achievements were expected, acknowledged with a nod, then filed away. Natalie's accomplishments, or even her failures that needed consoling, always took precedence. The message became clear. Academic success was my duty, not something worth celebrating. The only person who truly saw me was my grandmother Joan, my mother's mother, who lived about an hour away. Unlike my parents, Grandma Joan would call after every test just to hear about what I'd learned. She sent me books just because, and displayed my academic certificates proudly on her refrigerator alongside the few photos she had of Natalie. "Your mind is a gift, Selena," she would tell me during our weekend visits. "Never let anyone make you feel small for being intelligent. Some people are threatened by what they don't understand." When I was accepted to Northwestern University with a partial scholarship, Grandma Joan was the one who drove me to campus orientation. My parents had a legitimate reason that time. Natalie had qualified for a regional dance competition the same weekend, but Grandma made sure I didn't arrive alone. "Your parents love you," she would remind me when she sensed my disappointment. "They just don't always know how to show it to someone as self-sufficient as you. You make it easy for them to focus elsewhere because you never fall apart." I believed her because I needed to. The alternative, accepting that my parents simply cared less about me, was too painful to consider. So I embraced the role of the capable, independent daughter who didn't need the coddling and attention my sister received. My sophomore year of college brought the hardest blow. Grandma Joan, my champion and confidant, passed away unexpectedly from a stroke. I was devastated, not just because I'd lost the one person who truly celebrated my accomplishments, but because I'd lost the buffer who helped me rationalize my parents' behavior. At the funeral, Mom broke down completely unable to deliver the eulogy she'd prepared. I stepped in, speaking eloquently about Grandma's kindness and wisdom despite my own grief. Afterwards, several relatives commented on my composure and thoughtfulness. "You're so strong, Selena," my aunt remarked. "Your mother is lucky to have you to lean on during this difficult time." My father nodded in agreement. "Selena's always been our rock." Being the rock meant nobody noticed when you were crumbling inside. A month after the funeral came another painful revelation. My parents called to inform me they would be reducing their financial contribution to my education. "With your scholarship and your good grades, we know you'll figure it out," Dad explained. "Natalie's having a rough time after losing Grandma, and we think a private college prep program might help get her grades up for college applications. Those aren't cheap." I didn't argue. Instead, I picked up a weekend waitressing job on top of my campus library position. Between classes and 2 jobs, I averaged about 5 hours of sleep per night. But I maintained my perfect GPA because academic excellence was the one thing I could control, the one area where I could prove my worth even if no one at home seemed to notice. As graduation approached, a small persistent hope took root. Surely, walking across the stage to receive my diploma, as valedictorian no less, would finally be the moment my parents would see me, really see me. This accomplishment was too significant to be overshadowed or taken for granted. This would be my moment, and they would be there proud at last. I called home more frequently during my final semester, dropping hints about the importance of securing tickets early. I mailed formal announcements months in advance. I even texted photos of my graduation gown when it arrived. "We wouldn't miss it for the world, honey," Mom assured me 6 weeks before the ceremony. Dad's already requested the day off. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to believe that this milestone would be different, that I would finally have my turn in the spotlight of my parents' attention. I couldn't have been more wrong. Northwestern University had always been my dream school. From the moment I first visited its beautiful Evanston campus with its Gothic architecture and view of Lake Michigan, I knew it was where I belonged. The academic rigor, the prestigious programs, the sense of history. Everything about it called to me. What I hadn't anticipated was how lonely success could be without family support. While my partial scholarship covered about half my tuition, my parents' reduced financial support left a significant gap. Unlike many of my classmates whose parents covered their housing and expenses, I juggled full-time studies with nearly full-time work. My typical day started at 5 a.m. with 2 hours of studying before my morning classes. Then came afternoon shifts at the campus library, evening classes, and weekends spent waitressing at Lorenzo's, an Italian restaurant 15 minutes off campus. The owner, an elderly man who reminded me of my grandfather, often slipped me leftover pasta at the end of my shifts, concerned about my thinning frame. "Smart girls need to eat too," he would say, refusing to take no for an answer. During my junior year, I was fortunate enough to be assigned Jasmine Chen as my roommate, a brilliant biochemistry major whose parents lived overseas in Singapore. Without family nearby, Jasmine and I spent holidays together, gradually forming a bond that felt more like sisterhood than friendship. "You know what I love about you, Selena?" Jasmine said one night as we crammed for finals, surrounded by empty coffee cups and textbooks. "You never make excuses, you just get things done." I didn't tell her that making excuses had never been an option in my family, not for me anyway. The competition for valedictorian at Northwestern was fierce. By senior year, a small group of us were separated by mere hundredths of a point in our GPAs. I never explicitly aimed for the top position. I simply couldn't afford anything less than perfection in every assignment, every test, every paper. My financial aid depended on maintaining my academic standing, and without it, graduation itself would be in jeopardy. The turning point came during fall semester of senior year when Professor Eleanor Wilson assigned our capstone research paper in advanced economic theory. While most students chose conventional topics, I took a risk with my thesis on economic inequality and educational outcomes across generational divides. "This is graduate-level work, Ms. Matthews," Professor Wilson said when she returned my paper marked with an A+ and extensive complimentary notes. "Have you considered publishing or perhaps graduate school with a research focus?" I hadn't, not seriously anyway. Graduate school required money I didn't have. But Professor Wilson saw something in me becoming an unexpected mentor during my final year. She nominated me for departmental awards, connected me with research opportunities, and, though I didn't know it at the time, put my name forward for valedictorian consideration. When the email arrived in early April informing me that I had been selected as valedictorian for the graduating class, I stared at my screen in disbelief. Jasmine found me frozen in that position 10 minutes later. "Earth to Selena," she said, waving her hand in front of my face. Then she saw my screen and shrieked, tackling me in a hug that knocked us both onto my bed. "I knew it. You totally deserve this." That night I called my parents with the news. For once they both got on the line. "Valedictorian." Mom sounded genuinely surprised. "Out of your entire class, that's impressive, honey." "Really impressive," Dad agreed. "I didn't even know you were in the running for something like that." "Will you have to give a speech?" Mom asked. "Yes, it's tradition. I'll be speaking to the entire graduating class and all the families," I explained, unable to keep the excitement from my voice. "They said I'll be seated on stage with the university president and the keynote speaker." "Well, we definitely need to be there for that," Dad said firmly. "We'll get a hotel room for the night before so we don't have to rush." "Natalie will come too," Mom added. "She's been talking about visiting you at school for years. This is the perfect opportunity." For the next several weeks, I threw myself into writing the perfect graduation speech. I wanted it to be meaningful not just for me, but for all my classmates. I spoke about perseverance, opportunity, and gratitude. I thanked the faculty who had challenged us, the university that had shaped us, and the families who had supported us, especially the families who had supported us. I sent multiple reminders about graduation details, the time, the exact location, where to park, which entrance to use. Each time my parents confirmed they'd be there. "We've had it on the calendar since you told us," Mom assured me. "We're making a weekend of it. Natalie's even getting a new dress for the occasion." The night before graduation, I called one last time. "Just checking that you're still planning to leave by 9 tomorrow, right?" "That should give you plenty of time for the drive, even with traffic." "Absolutely," Dad replied. "We're all packed and ready. Just need to get a good night's sleep so we're fresh for your big day." "I can't wait to see you," I said, a rare vulnerability creeping into my voice. "This means everything to me." "We know, honey," Mom said softly. "We're so proud. Get some rest yourself. Tomorrow's your day to shine." I went to bed that night with a sense of completion I'd never felt before. Finally, all the years of hard work would culminate in this moment of recognition, not just from the university, but from the people whose approval I'd sought my entire life. For once, there would be no dance recital or crisis to overshadow my achievement. Tomorrow would be different. If only I'd known how different it would truly be. The morning of graduation dawned bright and clear. Perfect May weather with blue skies and a gentle breeze coming off Lake Michigan. I woke early as always, but for once it wasn't to study or work. Today was the culmination of everything I'd worked toward. Jasmine had stayed over to help me prepare, insisting on doing my hair and makeup for the occasion. "Valedictorians need to look the part," she said, curling my normally straight brown hair into soft waves. "Besides, I want to make sure your parents finally notice what an absolute goddess they raised." I smiled at her reflection in the mirror, grateful for her friendship, but not wanting to reveal my lingering anxiety. My parents hadn't texted their usual on the road message, yet despite the fact they should have left home over an hour ago. I'm sure they're just busy getting ready, I said more to myself than to Jasmine. Dad probably forgot to charge his phone again. As I slipped into my dress, a modest navy blue sheath that complemented the black graduation gown I would wear over it, my phone finally chimed. My heart leapt, but as I read the message, that familiar sinking feeling returned. Morning, sweetie. So sorry, but we're not going to make it today. Your father and I are just too tired after the work week, and the thought of that 3-hour drive each way is too much. We'll watch the live stream, though. So proud of you. Love you lots. I read the message 3 times, unable to process it. Too tired. After weeks of confirmation, after I'd secured their tickets, saved them seats, planned every detail, Jasmine saw my expression change. What is it? Traffic? I handed her the phone wordlessly, watching as her expression shifted from curiosity to disbelief to anger. Are you kidding me? She spat. They're tired. On the day their daughter is freaking valedictorian. Who does that? I couldn't answer. A lifetime of swallowing disappointment had left me practiced at maintaining composure, but this betrayal cut deeper than any before it. My vision blurred with tears. I refused to let fall. Maybe something else is going on, I suggested weakly. Maybe Dad isn't feeling well and Mom doesn't want to worry me. Jasmine looked like she wanted to say more, but pressed her lips together instead. Okay, let's finish getting you ready. You're giving the speech of a lifetime in 2 hours, and nothing is going to ruin that. I nodded, going through the motions of preparation while feeling increasingly hollow inside. As we gathered my cap gown and the index cards containing my speech, I found myself checking my phone compulsively, hoping for another message explaining the real reason, hoping this was somehow a misunderstanding. Waiting in line to enter the auditorium, I scrolled through social media out of habit, a nervous tick to occupy my hands. That's when I saw it. A post from just 30 minutes ago. My mother's Instagram account rarely saw activity, which made the new photos even more noticeable. The first image showed my parents smiling widely outside an upscale spa in their hometown. "Supporting our baby girl's self-care day," read the caption. The second photo featured Natalie in a plush robe, cucumber slices over her eyes, giving a thumbs up. The third showed all 3 of them at lunch, champagne glasses raised in a toast. Family time is the best time. Blessed spa day, #family first. The timestamp confirmed what I already knew in my heart. These photos were taken after they had texted me claiming they were too tired to attend my graduation. They weren't tired. They had simply chosen Natalie's spa day over the most important moment of my academic career. My legs went weak, and I stumbled out of line, barely making it to a bathroom stall before the tears came. Not quiet, dignified tears, but gut-wrenching sobs that I muffled with my hand. Years of rationalization crumbled in an instant. This wasn't a misunderstanding or poor planning. This was a deliberate choice that revealed an uncomfortable truth I'd been avoiding for years. In the hierarchy of my family's priorities, I simply didn't rank. A soft knock on the stall door interrupted my breakdown. "Selena, it's time to line up." Jasmine's voice was gentle but firm. "I saw the post. They don't deserve your tears today." I emerged, eyes red but dry. "I can't believe I wrote an entire paragraph thanking family support in my speech," I said, my voice hollow. Jasmine grabbed my shoulders. "Listen to me. You're about to stand on that stage as the valedictorian of Northwestern University. Don't give them the power to take this moment from you, too." As we joined the procession of black-robed graduates, I felt strangely detached, as if watching myself from a distance. Professor Wilson caught my eye from the faculty section and gave me an encouraging nod, unaware of the turmoil beneath my carefully composed expression. My phone continued to buzz with messages from extended family. "Can't wait to see pictures with your parents after the ceremony." Your mom must be bursting with pride today. Make sure someone records your parents' faces during your speech. Each notification twisted the knife deeper. This wasn't just about today. It was about a lifetime of showing up for a family that had never truly shown up for me. As I took my place on the stage among university officials and distinguished guests, I realized with startling clarity that I was done seeking validation from people who would never give it freely. The ceremony began, but I barely heard the speeches preceding mine. Instead, I found myself reflecting on every milestone my parents had missed or minimized. Every award ceremony attended with obvious reluctance, every accomplishment acknowledged with distracted half-interest, every moment that should have been mine overshadowed by Natalie's needs or wants. When the university president finally introduced me as class valedictorian, I rose mechanically and approached the podium. The sea of faces before me, thousands of graduates and their proud families, blurred as my gaze fixed on the large video camera capturing the live stream my parents had claimed they would watch. I looked down at my carefully prepared speech, full of gratitude and diplomatic acknowledgments, and in that moment I made a decision that would change everything. As I stood at the podium facing thousands of graduates and their families, time seemed to slow. The weight of the index cards in my hands, containing the speech I had meticulously crafted over weeks, suddenly felt unbearable. These words thanking supportive families and celebrating collective achievement no longer reflected my truth. I placed the cards on the podium, looked directly into the camera, live streaming the ceremony, and took a deep breath. My name is Selena Matthews. I began, my voice surprisingly steady. And I stand before you today as someone who almost didn't make it here. A hush fell over the crowd. This wasn't the typical valedictorian opening, and I could sense the shift in attention. We're taught that success stories follow a certain narrative. Hardworking individual supported by loving family overcomes obstacles and achieves dreams. But what happens when parts of that narrative don't match your reality? I paused, feeling a strange calm replacing the hurt and anger that had consumed me earlier. I worked 2 jobs throughout college while maintaining the GPA that earned me this honor. I spent nights in the library instead of at parties. I missed holidays to pick up extra shifts. I did this while watching classmates receive care packages, weekend visits, and emotional support from their families. The audience was completely silent now. In my peripheral vision, I could see Professor Wilson leaning forward, concern etched on her face. I used to think if I just achieved enough, if I became exceptional enough, I would finally be seen. That somehow the next accomplishment would be the one that made me worthy of the attention and support freely given to others. My voice caught slightly, but I pushed forward. Today, standing here as valedictorian, I've finally realized something important. You cannot earn love that is conditional. You cannot achieve your way into being valued by people who have decided your worth in advance. I looked across the sea of faces, seeing a mix of discomfort and recognition. Some of us are graduating today without anyone in the audience cheering specifically for us. Some of us got here entirely on our own, not because it made us stronger, but because we had no choice. I straightened my shoulders, feeling a weight lifting with each honest word. So this speech is for the students who found family in roommates and classmates when biological connections failed. For those who worked double shifts and still aced exams. For every person who has ever felt invisible despite their accomplishments. The first murmurs of applause began scattered but growing. To everyone who didn't show up, who consistently chose something or someone else when they had the chance to witness milestones, this one's for you. Not as an accusation, but as a declaration of independence. Your absence has taught me that my worth isn't determined by your recognition of it. I could see several students in the front rows nodding vigorously, some wiping away tears. And to my fellow graduates who did have that support system, Treasure it. Acknowledge your privilege in having people who showed up consistently. Not everyone standing among you today had that foundation. The speech continued as I spoke about resilience, self-validation, and the strength found in creating chosen family. As I concluded, I abandoned the formal closing I had prepared and spoke from my heart. We leave here today not just with degrees, but with the knowledge of our own capacity to survive and thrive, with or without the audience we'd hoped for. Congratulations, class of 2023. May you always know your worth even when others fail to see it. As I stepped back from the podium, the silence held for just a moment before the audience erupted. It began with my fellow graduates rising to their feet in a wave followed by parents, siblings, friends, until the entire stadium was standing. The applause wasn't just polite acknowledgement, it was thunderous recognition. Professor Wilson met my eyes as I returned to my seat, giving me a subtle nod that conveyed both surprise and respect. Jasmine, seated with the other graduates, was openly crying while clapping furiously. For the remainder of the ceremony, graduates I barely knew made eye contact with me, some mouthing "thank you" or pressing their hands to their hearts. I had inadvertently given voice to an experience many shared, but few discussed openly. As we filed out after receiving our diplomas, strangers approached me. Some graduates, some parents. "Your speech made me call my daughter immediately to tell her I'm proud of her," one father said, voice thick with emotion. "You just told my entire college story," whispered a girl I recognized from the chemistry department. "I've never heard someone speak so honestly at a graduation," a professor commented. It was long overdue. My phone remained noticeably silent from my immediate family, but it was flooded with messages from extended relatives, former high school teachers, and acquaintances who had watched the live stream. "Selena, I had no idea," wrote my father's sister. "Your uncle and I are incredibly proud of you. We should have been there." As the formal festivities concluded and graduates dispersed to meet their families, Jasmine linked her arm through mine. "Your speech broke the internet, at least the northwestern corner of it," she said, showing me her phone where clips were already being shared across campus social media. That's when my phone finally rang, my mother's name lighting up the screen. I let it go to voicemail, suddenly uninterested in whatever reaction she might have. The voicemail she left was exactly what I expected. "Selena, what were you thinking? Do you have any idea how embarrassing that was? Call me back immediately." My father's message followed shortly after. "Your mother and I are extremely disappointed in your behavior today. That was a disrespectful display that reflected poorly on this family. We deserve an explanation." Then came Natalie's text. "Way to make everything about you again. Mom's crying and Dad's furious. Thanks for ruining their day with your attention-seeking drama. Some of us don't need to publicly embarrass our family to feel important." I turned off my phone and looked at Jasmine. "I think I'm ready for that graduation dinner you mentioned. For the first time in my life, I chose to celebrate my achievement without waiting for validation from the people who had never freely given it." As we headed to dinner with friends, I felt lighter than I had in years. 2 days later, after a weekend of celebration and deliberately avoiding my family's attempts at contact, I drove to my parents' house to collect some belongings I'd stored there. I planned to be quick, grab my things, and leave with minimal interaction. But as I turned onto my parents' street, I saw Natalie sitting on the curb in front of the house. Mascara streaked down her face, shoulders shaking with sobs. I parked and approached cautiously, our relationship too complicated for me to immediately rush to her aid. As she looked up and saw me, I expected anger or accusation. Instead, her expression crumpled further. "They won't stop talking about your speech," she said between hiccups. "Dad keeps saying you've ruined his reputation at work since his colleagues saw the live stream. Mom's been calling everyone apologizing for your outburst." I stood awkwardly, unsure how to respond. "I never realized," Natalie continued, wiping her face with her sleeve. "I never saw how differently they treated us. until everyone started asking questions. That was the beginning of the most honest conversation my sister and I had ever had. My sister and I sat in the parking lot for nearly an hour, having the first real conversation of our adult lives. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the asphalt as Natalie revealed her perspective on our family dynamics, one I'd never considered. "I always thought you had it easy," she admitted, tracing patterns on her jeans. "Everything came naturally to you, school planning, being responsible. Mom and Dad never worried about you, but they were constantly stressed about me failing or messing up." I stared at her, momentarily speechless. "Easy, Natalie. I worked myself to exhaustion trying to get their attention. Nothing was ever good enough." "But they expected you to succeed. They expected me to fail," she countered. "Do you know how that feels? To have your parents constantly surprised when you accomplish anything they celebrated because they were shocked I could actually do something right." The irony wasn't lost on me. While I'd been starving for recognition, Natalie had been suffocating under low expectations. "When you got into Northwestern, they talked about it like it was inevitable," she continued. "When I got accepted to state, Dad immediately asked if I was sure I could handle it. They've been micromanaging my life because they don't believe I'm capable." "And that spa day?" I asked, still raw from the betrayal. Natalie looked away. "Mom said you'd understand because you're so independent. She said it was more important to support me because I needed it more. I knew it was wrong, but—" She trailed off, unable to finish. "But it was easier to accept their attention than to question it." I finished for her. She nodded, fresh tears spilling. "After your speech went viral on campus, people started sending it to me. Comments like, 'Is this your sister?' And 'Did your parents really skip her graduation for a spa day?' That's when I realized how it looked from the outside, how it actually was." Before we could continue, my parents' car pulled into the driveway. They spotted us immediately, their expressions hardening as they approached. "Finally decided to show your face." Dad's voice was cold as he slammed the car door. "After publicly humiliating this family." Mom's eyes were puffy from crying, but her anger was palpable. "How could you, Selena? After everything we've done for you." "What exactly have you done for me lately, Mom?" I asked quietly, standing to face them. "Besides, make it clear where I stand in your priorities." "We've supported you your entire life," Dad shouted. "Paid for your education." "Partially," I corrected. "I worked 2 jobs and took out loans for the rest after you reduced support to pay for Natalie's college prep program." "You were always self-sufficient," Mom interjected. "You never needed us the way Natalie does." "I never needed you." My voice rose despite my efforts to remain calm. "I needed you at every science fair debate competition and honor society induction you missed. I needed you when Grandma died and I had no one left who was proud of me. I needed you at my college graduation, especially when you promised repeatedly that you'd be there." "We watched the live stream," Dad said defensively. "While having champagne at Natalie's spa day," I replied. "A spa day you never mentioned when you told me you were too tired to drive to my graduation." Natalie stood beside me now, her presence unexpected but welcome. "They're not being fair to you," she said softly. "They never have been." My parents looked stunned at this betrayal from their favored daughter. "Natalie, stay out of this," Mom warned. "No." Natalie replied, her voice stronger than I'd ever heard it. "Selena's right. You've always treated us differently. You made her feel invisible and made me feel incompetent. We've both been damaged by it." The confrontation continued, years of resentment surfacing from all sides. My parents denied, deflected, and eventually resorted to guilt tactics, none of which worked anymore. I stood my ground with a confidence I'd never felt in their presence before. "I'm not asking you to apologize," I said finally. I'm not even asking you to understand. I'm simply telling you that I won't participate in this dynamic anymore. I deserve better, and frankly, so does Natalie. I walked to my car and loaded the few boxes I'd come from my hands steady despite the adrenaline coursing through my body. As I prepared to leave, Natalie approached, her face resolute. "Can I come with you? Just for a few days?" she asked quietly. "I think we all need some space." The request surprised me, but I nodded. "Pack a bag, I'll wait." As we drove away together, leaving our parents standing speechless in the driveway, I felt a complex mix of emotions. Grief for the family relationship I'd always wanted, but never had relief at finally speaking my truth, and an unexpected sense of hope that Natalie and I might forge a new kind of relationship from the ashes of our dysfunctional upbringing. For the first time, I wasn't alone in recognizing the truth of our family dynamics. And that validation coming from my sister of all people began a healing process I hadn't known I needed. The months following graduation unfolded in unexpected ways. While my Northwestern degree opened doors, it was my graduation speech, which had indeed gone viral beyond campus circles, that captured the attention of Dr. Vivian Richardson, director of the Elmwood Research Institute, a prestigious think tank focused on socioeconomic policy. "Your economic analysis was impressive," she told me during our first meeting, "but your ability to articulate complex emotional realities with such clarity is what convinced me you'd be an asset to our team." By October, I had settled into my role as a junior research analyst, working on projects examining how family support systems impact economic mobility across generations, a topic that held obvious personal significance. My tiny but affordable apartment in Chicago's North Side became my sanctuary, the first space that was truly and solely mine. The professional opportunity was life-changing, but the personal growth happening simultaneously felt even more significant. For the first time, I was building a life based on my own terms, surrounded by people who valued me for exactly who I was. Contact with my parents dwindled to occasional text messages. Their initial anger had eventually shifted to awkward attempts at normalcy without acknowledgement of what had happened. A pattern I recognized from childhood when uncomfortable truths were systematically buried rather than addressed. "Hope you're doing well. Dad and I saw Chicago got snow already. Stay warm. Your cousin Jessica got engaged. Thought you'd want to know." I responded politely, but briefly, maintaining firm boundaries around my emotional availability. Their refusal to acknowledge how they'd hurt me made deeper reconciliation impossible for now. The real surprise came from Natalie. After staying with me for nearly 2 weeks following our confrontation with our parents, she'd returned home, but with a noticeably different attitude. Our text exchanges, once rare and superficial, became regular and increasingly authentic. "Mom asked if I've heard from you. I said yes, but didn't share details. Is that okay?" she'd text. "Dad made another comment about your phase of independence. I actually called him out on it. You would have been proud." Then came the Saturday in November when Natalie showed up at my apartment unannounced, clutching a manila envelope and looking nervous. "I've been thinking about what you said," she began after I invited her in. "About finding your own path instead of following someone else's expectations." She opened the envelope and pulled out college applications. "I'm applying to transfer to the Art Institute. I've always wanted to study photography, but Mom and Dad pushed me toward business because it was practical." My surprise must have shown on my face because she quickly added, "I know it seems sudden, but it's not. I've been taking photography classes secretly for over a year." She showed me her portfolio on her laptop, stunning urban landscapes and portraits that revealed a talent I'd never known she possessed. "These are amazing, Nat," I said honestly. "But why are you showing me this? Why not just apply?" Her answer caught me off guard. "Because I need help with the application essays. You've always been the good writer, and—" She hesitated. "I want to know if I could stay with you if I get in." just until I find my own place. The request represented a seismic shift in our relationship. My sister wasn't just acknowledging my abilities, she was asking for my support in her journey toward independence. "Of course I'll help," I told her, "and you can stay as long as you need." Over the next few weeks, we worked together on her applications. I learned more about my sister during those sessions than I had in our entire lives growing up in the same house. Behind the social butterfly persona lay an observant, thoughtful young woman with genuine artistic talent and surprising depth. "I always envied how brave you were," she confessed one evening as we reviewed her personal statement. "Standing up to mom and dad charting your own course." I nearly laughed. Me brave. I spent most of my life desperately trying to get their approval. "But you did it while staying true to yourself," she insisted. "I became whoever they wanted me to be in any given moment. At least you knew who you were." These conversations began healing wounds I hadn't fully acknowledged. Not just from my parents' favoritism, but from the wedge it had driven between Natalie and me. We'd been pitted against each other in an unspoken competition for parental attention, preventing us from being true allies. Meanwhile, my professional life flourished. Dr. Richardson became the mentor I'd always needed, providing constructive feedback while genuinely celebrating my successes. My colleagues respected my insights, and for the first time I felt valued for my contributions rather than merely tolerated for my competence. The irony wasn't lost on me when, after a local newspaper featured our institute's latest research with my name prominently mentioned, my parents suddenly renewed their interest in my life. "We saw the article about your work," Dad texted. "Very impressive. We've shared it with everyone." "When are you coming to visit?" Mom added. "We miss you." Their renewed attention, now that I was receiving external recognition, confirmed what I'd always suspected. Their love had always been contingent on how I reflected on them, not on who I actually was. I maintained polite distance while focusing on building meaningful connections elsewhere. I joined a book club, made friends with neighbors, and even started dating James, a kind-hearted architectural engineer I met at a museum lecture. "Tell me about your family," he asked on our third date. I gave him an edited version initially, but as our relationship deepened, I shared the full story, including the graduation speech. "That must have taken incredible courage, yeah," he said when I finished reaching for my hand across the table. "Standing up for yourself like that." "It didn't feel like courage at the time," I admitted. "It felt like survival." What I didn't tell him, what I was only beginning to acknowledge to myself, was how that moment of public honesty had fundamentally changed me. By speaking my truth after years of silent acceptance, I'd reclaimed my narrative and stepped into my own power. As the holidays approached, bringing their inevitable family expectations, I made a conscious decision to prioritize my well-being. Instead of subjecting myself to the familiar dynamics of my parents' home, I volunteered at a community center, serving Christmas dinner, then hosted a small gathering for friends without local family. Natalie joined us, bringing her acceptance letter to the Art Institute as a cause for celebration. As we toasted her future, surrounded by my chosen family, I realized I was experiencing genuine joy untainted by the familiar ache of parental disappointment. "You know what's funny?" Natalie said as she helped me wash dishes afterward. "Mom keeps asking if you've forgiven them yet, but she's never once asked what she did that needs forgiving." I nodded, recognizing the pattern. "They want reconciliation without accountability. It's always been their way." "I used to think you were the lucky one because you were so independent," she continued. "Now I realize you had to be." That night, after everyone had left, I sat alone reflecting on how much had changed in just 6 months. The validation I'd spent a lifetime seeking from my parents no longer seemed important. I had built something more valuable, a life surrounded by people who appreciated me for exactly who I was, not for what I could achieve or how I made them look. The painful gift of my parents' absence at graduation had ultimately freed me from the exhausting cycle of seeking approval I would never fully receive. In its place grew something far more sustaining, the knowledge that my worth existed independently of their recognition of it. 2 years after my graduation, I stood at another podium, this time accepting the Elmwood Institute's annual award for outstanding contribution to socioeconomic research. My work examining the intersection of family dynamics and economic mobility had resonated deeply within academic circles, leading to publication in several prestigious journals and an upcoming book deal. The banquet hall was filled with colleagues, mentors, and friends who had supported my journey. As I looked out at the audience, I spotted Natalie in the front row, now sporting a stylish pixie cut and the confident posture of someone coming into her own. Beside her sat James, who had recently moved in with me after a year of dating. Conspicuously absent were 2 seats I had reserved out of courtesy rather than expectation, places for my parents who had once again chosen not to attend. Their excuse this time was a neighborhood association meeting they couldn't possibly miss as committee heads. The pattern remained unchanged, but my reaction to it had transformed completely. Where once there would have been disappointment and hurt, I felt only a passing acknowledgement of their consistent choice. Their absence no longer defined or diminished this moment. 2 years ago, I began my acceptance speech. I stood at another podium feeling utterly alone despite years of achievement. Today, I stand before you feeling profoundly connected, not just to my work, but to the community of support that has made it possible. The journey from that raw graduation speech to this moment of professional recognition hadn't been linear or simple. There had been difficult days when old patterns of seeking validation resurfaced, moments of doubt when familiar insecurities whispered that perhaps I truly wasn't enough. But with each small choice to prioritize authentic connections over conditional approval, the path forward became clearer. Natalie's transformation had been equally remarkable. Now in her second year at the Art Institute, she had discovered her voice through her photography documenting urban family structures with sensitivity and insight. Our relationship, once characterized by competition and distance, had evolved into genuine sisterhood based on mutual respect and understanding. "Your success is pissing them off, you know," she told me after the awards ceremony as we shared dessert at a nearby restaurant. "Not because they're not proud, but because you did it without them. It challenges their narrative that they were essential to your achievements." James and his parents, who had welcomed me with a warmth I barely knew how to accept initially, joined us in celebration. The contrast between this supportive family dynamic and my own upbringing was sometimes startling. "We're so proud of you, Selena," James's mother said, embracing me with genuine affection, "though I can't imagine anyone wouldn't be." The comment wasn't meant to highlight my parents' absence, but it underscored the reality I had come to accept: some people simply couldn't give what they didn't possess themselves. My parents' conditional love wasn't a reflection of my worth, but of their own limitations. My healing journey hadn't been about forgetting the hurt or pretending it didn't matter. Rather, it involved acknowledging the pain while refusing to let it dictate my future. I had learned to parent myself in the ways my actual parents couldn't, celebrating my accomplishments, comforting myself through disappointments, and giving myself permission to thrive without their approval. This newfound strength extended beyond my personal life. At the Institute, I had initiated a mentorship program for first-generation college students struggling with unsupportive family dynamics. The wounds of my experience had become wisdom I could share with others walking similar paths. "Your graduation speech changed my life," one student told me during a mentoring session. "It made me realize I wasn't alone in feeling invisible to the people who should see me most clearly." On the video of that speech, which someone had uploaded to YouTube, had garnered hundreds of thousands of views and countless comments from people sharing similar experiences. What had felt like a personal catharsis had somehow become a source of validation for others struggling with conditional love and family disappointment. Natalie maintained limited contact with our parents, visiting occasionally, but establishing firm boundaries around what she would tolerate. "They're trying in their way," she explained, "but their way still involves making everything about them." I had reached a place of forgiveness, not because my parents had acknowledged their behavior or sought to make amends, but because carrying resentment no longer served my growth. Forgiveness didn't mean reconciliation or accepting further mistreatment. It meant freeing myself from the weight of expecting them to be different than they were. The truth was both simple and profound. The family you create in life can heal the wounds from the family you were born into. My chosen family. Natalie in her new authenticity. James with his steady support colleagues who valued my contributions, friends who showed up consistently, had shown me what genuine love looked like. Present, unconditional, celebrating success rather than feeling threatened by it. As we finished our celebration dinner and prepared to part ways, Natalie pulled me aside. "Remember when we were kids and I always got upset if you got attention?" she asked. "I think I was afraid there wasn't enough love to go around." I nodded, understanding completely. "I know better now," she continued. "Real love multiplies. It doesn't divide. It's not a limited resource our parents made it out to be." Her insight struck me as profoundly true. In moving beyond the scarcity mindset our parents had inadvertently taught us, both Natalie and I had discovered an abundance of connection neither of us had imagined possible. The journey wasn't complete. Healing rarely follows a tidy narrative arc with a definitive endpoint. There would still be moments of grief for the family relationship we had needed but never received. Yet with each passing day, the space once filled with yearning for parental validation was increasingly occupied by genuine self-worth and meaningful connection. Your worth isn't determined by those who can't see it. This truth, born from pain and affirmed through growth, had become the foundation upon which I built my life. Not as a rejection of my past, but as an embrace of all I had become despite it, and perhaps in some ways because of it. Have you ever had to build your self-worth despite the people who should have nurtured it? How did you find the strength to value yourself when those closest to you couldn't see your true worth? Share your story in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more stories of resilience and healing. Remember, sometimes the family we choose brings more healing than the family we were born into. Thank you for listening to my story.